Hello everyone, time for another Q&A video and with an interesting question from Matthew about captured German weapons. Here's Bismarck for military aviation history. Who will
Read the
support
question.
me here?
Read the question and then sit silently as we are being lectured. So Matthew, you want to know, was there any official or unofficial policy in the Heer about the use of captured weaponry? Was it as common as the movies portray it?
So first off, I should add there's an upcoming video coming up with Jens Wehner from the Militärhistorische Museum Dresden, and I also did a few videos, one in particular, Ludwig's one, talking about captured weapons, and I also touched it in German army rearmament and also in the Panzer 30T underrated video. Now, about movies, I don't know because I stopped watching them a while ago, and back then actually it was rather rare, but I might be terrible. So about the policy thing, I'm not entirely sure. Now, what we know, there was clearly a policy for giving the names properly. So they numbered all the stuff, and they also put in parentheses the national shortcut. So R for Russian, Russisch, F for Französisch, French, and so on. So
T for
Czechoslovakia and others. So now I'm not sure how much is strict policy versus just simple improvisation over the line or where you draw the line. So, but there was a lot of use of equipment already done pre-war. For instance, in one book it was written that the war material that was captured from Czechoslovakia was about sufficient to equip 15 German divisions. And we're talking about infantry divisions here. Then for the Panzer 38T, the famous tank, if you look at the numbers, these are usually highly overestimated for early war. For Poland, it was 57 tanks, so about 2%. Then for France, it was 228 already, so 9%. And here of particular interest were the 7th and 8th Panzer Division, the 7th best known as the Ghost Division under Erwin Rommel, who actually wrote, I think, if I remember, was very positive about the tank. Yet for Operation Barbarossa in 1941, there were 746 tanks, which made up about 23% of the Panzerwaffe at that point, invading, not the one at home. So with other elements, you have a lot of trucks and motorcycles, also used a lot of French equipment. And since we have you here, how was it about, do you know about captured
planes
and aircraft? I guess they were mostly used for training.
So some were used for training, but the Luftwaffe didn't actually adopt as many foreign aircraft as the army did when it comes to tanks and trucks and so on. I would believe that the Luftwaffe probably also got a share of the trucks and the sort of the logistical vehicles.
Yeah.
That would make sense. For aircraft, yeah, this is very much a training issue and also an equipment issue.
Yeah, it's more delicate.
Yeah, it's a lot more delicate. They did, however, sell some of the aircraft they got to Eastern countries. Actually, for example, the Finns got a couple of the French fighters and so on, and they gave some of them back to Vichy France. And that is pretty much it. So sometimes you see some very sort of obscure American planes that the French used that they bought sort of in the early 30s that pop up. You know, you see a picture and you see the Balkenkreuz on there, and you're just looking, when did they use this? Where did they use this? The picture obviously has absolutely no context. You don't know where this is. And I'm going to presume that a lot of this was just test flying and then it was just sitting around, maybe being used as a liaison aircraft for Geschwader somewhere. But
or maybe for security reasons?
Maybe.
Because for anti-partisan and everything.
It's possible. But the issue there is also a spare parts.
Yeah.
So, you know,
but then if they're stationed in France, so you mean the US ones?
Yeah. So it gets very difficult.
Yeah.
And what they did use the French industrial capacity, of course, is then to build some of the aircraft that the Germans used. And after the war, we do see the French also using some German aircraft afterwards. But that goes a completely different topic. So for aircraft, less so. But I would presume that they also benefited from some of the transport capacities.
Didn't they use French engines in the duck?
They did. So they did do some of that.
They handled 129.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
they had GNOME engines. But that was also sort of more of a desperation thing.
Yeah. I talk a bit about how much the French produced aircrafts, I think, in my occupied industry videos a bit, and compare them with the United States numbers. It's quite different, let's call it this. So now actually back to the army, I have a nice quote here from Stahel. The 18th Panzer Division, for example, fielded no fewer than 96 types of personnel carriers, 111 types of trucks, and 37 types of motorcycles. So you can see even for rather elite units like Panzer divisions, there was a lot of stuff used even for the trucks, motorcycle, and other stuff. So not just the tanks. And as far as I remember, for instance, the Panzerlehr division in 1944 was equipped with Soviet artillery, heavy artillery, which in general was better than the German one. It had a larger range and everything. So the Soviets were really good with artillery. And if you look then at the Atlantic Wall, at the static divisions, the bodenständige Divisionen, there's this remark basically that the Atlantic Wall consisted of an European artillery museum. So they used like everything they're on. Yeah, I mean, the issue is with the Luftwaffe, if you have a plane, if there's something goes wrong, it drops down. If the artillery piece doesn't work anymore, okay, worst case it explodes, but usually it just won't work and not much is going to happen. And training an infantryman is not particularly an issue, whereas training a pilot is very expensive in fuel and everything else. So additionally, I have seen high-level documents, or better the reprints, about what war material was captured from the Italians after the surrender to the Allies. So this was, I think, a report to Hitler or something, where they listed all the stuff they got after the Italians surrendered. And so they were aware of the situation. So in other ways, we have it in elite units like Panzer divisions. We have it in third-rate units. We know it was done in other units. It was done extensively, without question, something which we'll cover in the video. And we know it shows up in high-level documents, and we know there was a policy for naming and everything. But I don't know how much was... I think a lot of it was actually improvisation. So I assume more or less on the mid-level, like the naming stuff, there was some policies, but it was not like a well thought out plan or something, I guess. And sometimes, I guess on the Eastern Front directly, usually for the weapons. Like I remember, in the raid tactics video, they specifically mentioned the use of a captured rifle, automatic rifle, where we speculate what it actually be like this SVT-40, an automatic version of that one, which probably was just, you get along what you have there. So there likely was not really a policy. And I assume that if some soldier wanted to use a captured weapon and there was not a particular issue against it, like friendly fire or misidentification because the weapons sound differently and soldiers might do an error here, that it probably nobody cared too much as long as he did his job right.
You could maybe also make an argument that some of this stuff was introduced to increase the operational strength of the divisions.
In some cases, the rearmament of the Wehrmacht to a certain degree would have not been possible to Poland, and also attacking the Soviet Union would not have been possible in that way without all the captured equipment. That's very important. And so there's one final case I have. So of course, in some cases there was, for instance, a large amount of Soviet guns were reused because they captured a lot during Barbarossa. And one good example for a combination is where the Marder 3, the Panzerjäger that used the Soviet 76mm gun. And for this case, you either had a lot of stock of Soviet ammunition, or I heard in some cases that rechambered them. I'm not entirely sure. And the Marder, I think, was also built on the chassis of the Panzer 38T. So you have a captured gun on a captured chassis. Although for the chassis, the industry was also captured and was also repurposed. And since that was Czechoslovakia, which was before part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and was the arms industry, one of the major arms industry places there, the integration was more or less easier done because they were more or less Germans as well, or German, ethnic German, or however you want to call it. So this is also why the integration of Czechoslovakia, I think the arms industry was a bit easier than with other regions that were captured.
Do you know anything about generally French artillery in Barbarossa? Have you looked into that yet? Because they had a lot of guns, but I presume a lot of them ended up on the Atlantic Wall.
I'm not entirely. It might have been. I mean, of course, for the security divisions.
Yes.
The Coburg and all those, likely they used them. And I think also that in some cases they replaced them with, I guess, the regular artillery or something could have been. I mean, you had more than 100 infantry divisions or something. Yeah. So, and they set up some, so I'm not entirely, I would have to look into it. And I think there was something mentioned in the book sometimes, but if I don't particularly focus on it, I forget it usually. And usually they look at the Panzer divisions, because if you have already the Panzer divisions quite some stuff going on, it's usually more on the infantry divisions, I assume. Because, if you put it in your best divisions, in your best equipped divisions, then about the other divisions, it's not an issue.
It gets very hard to track once you go down from a tank to smaller equipment, I guess.
Artillery, you have how much? I think 36 light artillery pieces and 12 heavy artillery pieces. So actually very few, because in the Panzer division you had, depending on which time in the war, from between, I think, up to 300 to around Barbarossa, I think it was 150 to 200, maximum 300 or something. Don't quote me on these numbers, because Barbarossa already was quite complicated, the range from the tanks, and this is something I usually write down. So,
all right, I hope that answers your questions. Before we ramble on even more, Matthew, thank you very much for sending it in. And supporting, of course, Bernhard on Patreon, I believe he is. Subscribe star, channel memberships, all these great ways of supporting your favorite YouTube channels.
Also support him.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks for supporting. Then thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.